Welcome to this edition of the K-12 Change Equation podcast, where education leaders share real stories of district transformation and uncover the variables that drive sustainable change. I'm Leila Nuland, change agent, joined by my co-host Mort Sherman, and I am excited to introduce our guest in a moment. We have Dr. Gladys Cruz with us. Before I introduce you, Gladys, I do want to take a moment and step back as to why we're coming together today. Right now, we're at this really interesting moment in time in which we see a shift and pretty dramatic change in how we are funding dollars to school systems, our local education agencies, which is where much of our audience is living and breathing, whether they're parents or current district leaders themselves. And as we look to what's coming down the pike, we hear and believe that there's going to be greater state control and influence over how funding dollars are spent. And what Mort and I hope to do in the coming weeks is dive into what's between the state education agencies and our local education agencies, and those are our regional education agencies. And so to date, we've talked to leaders of our local systems, we've talked to leaders at the state level, we've talked to partners, but we really haven't engaged folks that are in your seat. So I am thrilled that you're kicking off a sequence of episodes in which we're going to dive into what do regional education agencies do, where is the opportunity ahead of us, and what are the challenges that you're facing right now? Because I don't think we're really talking about those. And I think it's important as a part of the advocacy that we're doing on this show to educate our communities about the importance of regional education agencies, their mission, and how community members can better support and school district leaders can better work with their regional education agency. So today we have Dr. Gladys Cruz, who has over a 30-year career as an established and distinguished educator. Dr. Cruz began her career as a teacher in Puerto Rico, and her education experience ranges from K-12 schools to universities in New York State and Puerto Rico. In addition, she worked briefly as a director of curriculum services for the New York State Education Department. Currently, you're the district superintendent for Questar III, a regional education agency in New York, which is called the BOCES, right? And I know you're going to spend a little bit of time educating our audience about what that is. And you're currently providing direction to 23 local school districts. Is that accurate?
22.
22 local school districts, and overseeing the delivery of more than 275 programs and services across the state of New York. So I don't know when you sleep. Maybe that'll be our first question for you. But given the scope of your role, I'm really excited. I know we can go in a lot of different directions, but I think to start, giving us a lay of the land of what does your agency do in service of local education agencies and how you work and what your obligations are to the State Department of Education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Gladys, wait a second, because I want to jump in. I told you that Leila and I would fight for the honor of introducing you. I just want to add a little bit different view than the formal introduction. I've known Gladys for years. I worked with her when I was at ASA, and she adds an additional dimension to the bio you just said, Leila. She's a leader. And it's fascinating to me the opportunities that the service center leaders have, not just in providing services and opportunities to districts, but leading them in thought and practice. And then Gladys has taken that to the national level, where she served as ASA president, and I had the honor of working with her on a commission when she was president, when I was at ASA. And whenever we at ASA had to get a voice of reason and sound judgment, we turn to Gladys. And Gladys, I just want to thank you not only for your local leadership, but for your national leadership and setting an example of how you go about doing this work in a deliberate, methodical, impassioned way on behalf of the children of America. So I am just so happy to see you again and to be part of this conversation today.
I'm super excited to be here with both of you. Education is my passion. Wasn't my intention to go to education, but we can leave that story for another day. So, educational service agencies such as BOCES, and BOCES stands for Board of Cooperative Educational Services in New York State. We are 37. There are 37 BOCES in New York State. Most districts in New York State are part of a BOCES except the Big Five. So Yonkers, Rochester, New York City, Syracuse, and I'm missing one. They are not part of the BOCES, but they are able to participate in their services and programs if they wish to. BOCES are in New York State are critical partners to local school agencies because they are able to provide programs and services that many districts would find difficult, if not impossible, to offer on their own. And let me just talk a little bit about that. So, for example, if you want to create, let's say, and we did this, a heavy equipment program, right, for our high school students who are interested in heavy equipment. If you're a district on your own and you want to create this type of program, it's going to be very costly. However, if you come together with other districts, rural, small ones, larger ones, you can pool the resources through the BOCES and you can create an economy of scale and provide that program at a much more cost effective way, more efficient. So those are the kinds of things that we're able to do. And I always say that, BOCES are able to do something much faster in many situations than a school district. So we're able to create a program where we have a lot of different partners, the Department of Labor, different universities, colleges, um, businesses. We have over 400 partners that we're constantly working with to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the workforce, the needs of our society and our local communities. So it's a really rich um, uh, opportunity and landscape in New York State to be able to have that BOCES that interacts between the state education agency and the local education agencies. So in New York State too, I talk always about my role because I am a commissioner's representative in the field and the CEO of the BOCES supporting the 22 districts that we serve. There are also a few districts in the state of New York that are non-components of BOCES. We have one in our region. And those districts, although they may be non-components, they are part of the fabric of the BOCES. We invite them to the conversations just like we invite everybody else. I think the BOCES and the ESAs are going to become more and more critical as the funding mechanism changes, because as I said, you can, through an education agency, you can pool resources and create programs and services that would be difficult, if not impossible, to do on your own as a local education agency. So it's about putting together the know-how and the resources to create something different, something new, to support the students and families in our region.
I just want to pick up on what Gladys was saying, Leila. This question of service to the districts, does the initiative always come from them, or do you as a leader say, hey, here's what I'm hearing at the state or the federal level, and here's some ideas for how we might work together?
So I would say it's both. I always, I value so much the work that I've been able to do with ASA, National Associations, with AESA, because I'm able to bring the knowledge of what's going on at different states to my local region. And I'll just give you a quick example. So we have some amazing career technical education programs. And the ASA, you may remember, had an apprenticeship program, had a program with the Department of Labor. I learned about this and I said, I want this for our region's students. So we had some staff attend some of those professional learning opportunities, and we launched a youth apprenticeship program in our BOCES. Just this past summer, we had, I believe, 35 juniors participating with different businesses and different trades in paid internships. And those students have a leg up in terms of, that business and possibilities for a job once they graduate from their senior year. So I have that piece that I'm always bringing ideas to the region. I'll give you another example. I learned about Abraham Maldonado through ASA. Abraham has also been a keynote for AESA. I said to Abraham, I want to work with you in our region. So I brought Abraham, and we are strategizing on how we can work within our region to make sure that AI is part of our fabric in our schools in this BOCES. So Abraham has come and has spoken to our superintendents. He has come and worked with them. He has come and worked with our BOCES leaders. So that's another example of how I bring what is happening at the national level to my region. But then I also work with subcommittees of superintendents. So we have 22 superintendents in our region, and we have 22 superintendents on different subcommittees. One is academic programs. The other one is business and school partnerships. The other one is leadership and professional learning. And the other one is district services. So we have these ongoing conversations with our superintendents in terms of where we should be going with academic programs, with services and programs that can support them in different areas. So that's another way of us creating new program services. So we do both.
You might want to meet Brown at some point. He's the first guy to introduce a Latina avatar in AI in the country. Just fascinating man. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. So I want to make sure that we pull on this thread around workforce development in your apprenticeship program, because we know what our federal government's view is, right, of a focus on workforce development and AI. So we're talking about the right things right now. And I, in the work that we're doing here with our team, unfortunately, I am interacting with a lot of district leaders who are thinking about school consolidation and how to meet the needs of their students in these budget constraints. And so I'm curious, Gladys, as you think about what's coming down the pike in the next 6 to 12 months, what are your goals around workforce readiness? And beyond New York, what advice do you have to I understand the structures are different in each state, but what advice would you offer to other states who are trying to figure out how to meet the needs of their students with these challenges in budgets and the best way to leverage organizations like yours?
So, you can create these programs to support the workforce. And that always should be driven by data and what the workforce needs are. So we just created an electrical trades program. We created a new welding program. Those are programs that are needed in this region. They may not be the programs that are needed in another state, in another region. So you always have to work, with your Department of Labor. There are workforce development groups all over in New York State, and I'm sure in all over the country. So you have to work within the different groups to make sure that what you develop really is going to lead to some good jobs for students, and that will help in the build the economy, right? To continue to build the economy in the region and in the state. So that is something that we are constantly watching. We do ask our students, what are some things that you want to learn? So we survey students in terms of what trades as well. For example, there's a huge gaming, I would say, niche in the capital region, and Troy, New York specifically. So we created a gaming CTE program. So students are learning how to develop, develop everything that has to do with any games. They do the music, they do the characters, they do the coding. Now those things will have to adapt to some of the artificial intelligence or tools that are available, and that's something that I'm constantly reminding our teachers of. So I think that for any state, you need to make sure that you're working and you're customizing your program delivery to what that economy needs. It may be in a place that you need to have, let's say, mechanics of aviation, right? That's a program we had. It wasn't at the time that we had it. It wasn't something that was much needed. Now I think it would be a different story. So you constantly have to adapt and change your offerings to make sure that you are providing the programming that matches the needs of the workforce. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that you work with all those partners.
So when I think about the scale that you're talking about, serving 22 districts, the number of students that you must be serving, and then, okay, we got 35 juniors through an apprenticeship program. When I think about scaling, I think about the resources that you're going to need, and the conversation we had before we started recording when I was asking when I was going to see you in person and rattled off a bunch of conferences that we might be able to connect at. And you shared you are facing staffing shortages in the way that we're seeing our school districts face staffing shortages. And I know you're not alone at the regional level facing that. Can we talk a little bit about that as we try to unpack what do we need to do to get to the scale that we all have an eye toward? We've talked a lot about enrollment, employment, and enlisting on this show to date. But I know you have resource constraints as well. So from your view, if you had a perfect world, how would you run funding, and what do you need to better serve and scale what you're doing with this great innovation right now?
I do have staffing shortages, and right now I'm wearing a lot of hats. So in New York, like everywhere else, there's staffing shortages in particular areas. CT is a area that there are staffing shortages. Special education, that's another area that there are staffing shortages. Mathematics has been an area of staffing shortages. ESL, science, those are some areas. Depending on again, I think the staffing shortages uh, varies in different regions and different states. Um, one thing that I did in this region, and it has paid huge dividends, is that so New York State has different certification approaches. So you can get a different type of certification based on, if you're coming from a trade, there's a different there's a pathway to get certified. So we were struggling with our CT teachers getting certified, our teaching assistants getting certified. And so I went to the University at Albany and I said, listen, I want to create a program to certify our teachers, our CT teachers, and our TAs. And I just don't want any program. I want it to be something that's stackable micro credentials that lead to certification. I don't want any courses that come from a shelf. I want to create the courses that staff need. And we created it. We have certified CT teachers, teaching assistants. TAs have become teachers. TAs have continued. We created. It was originally to be a 3-course stackable credentials. The teacher said, "We don't want to end this. Can we do more?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." I went back to the board. I said, "Hey, the teachers want to do more, so I'm not going to take that away from them." And so we did another 3 courses. So we're offering 6 courses for teachers. This leads them to certification TAs and to our trade teachers to get certified in CT. So I'm having to create my own ways to get these people in the pipeline, because the reality is that it's if I don't do that, I would be struggling with ensuring that I have teachers in the classrooms to run some of these programs. And I had 1 year when I had no teacher for my heavy equipment programs, and I had 2 programs running. And that was a really bad situation. So I said, this isn't happening to me again. And guess what? I have a co-teaching model, because I said, you know what? If these people can get really high paying jobs anytime they want, and they can leave me. So I don't want to run the risk again of not having anyone. They could probably both leave at the same time, but the chances are probably smaller. So I created a co-teaching model in some of these high to staff programs. And I have, instead of a teacher and a teaching assistant, I have 2 teachers that are certified. And it's working beautifully. The courses that they're getting, curriculum development, assessment, classroom management, how to educate students with exceptionalities, how to educate students with language needs. These courses are really critical in today's environment, and we're seeing a difference in the instruction. I believe, and I have a hypothesis of that, we will see a huge increment of success when we have a mass of teachers and teaching assistants who have gone through this program. So I encourage people to reach out to their university partners, uh, I meet with the presidents of all my local universities and colleges every year. So at least once a year, I have breakfast or lunch with them. I go visit them at the university, and I continue to maintain those partnerships. And what can we do together? How can we fulfill our mission working together? So that's something that I do, and I encourage people to do that. Sometimes they're just stuck on for, and uh, so that they can work with you.
That's more. Can I throw something at you more? I have a question for you. And then I want Gladys to
Sure.
react to. Can I ask you a question? So I don't know. Was it this morning? Time's a bit of a blur, but Ed Week it was either yesterday morning or this morning. I look at Ed Week as I always do. And the headline is that our high schoolers are less equipped in reading and math, and it's getting worse and worse. And I am sitting here and I'm thinking about workforce readiness, and I'm thinking about what you're doing and you use the word success. What's the intersection of the headline that we're graduating kids who can't read and have what we consider the fundamental skills to be successful, while we're pushing for workforce readiness? Does this mean we're completely rethinking skill development? Is it rethinking how we're testing? There's so many different avenues we can go, and I know Mort will have some thoughts on this. So Gladys, if Mort can respond, and then if you want to layer on, I'm sitting here thinking we have to dig into this right now, because the headlines don't necessarily match what we know to be true for the outcomes in when we put kids in these CTE programs, right? So Mort.
The NAEP scores indicate that there was a decline in reading and math going through 2019, which certainly was exacerbated through COVID, and we've not recovered. In fact, the scores continue to decline. There were 2 states, I think, just announced that they're going to go away from annual state testing, and I think Texas is one of them. The question, I think, Leila, is it real? Yes, it is. It is absolutely real that there are declines in skills as measured by those tests. When you and I talk with Jack Naglieri, there's other ways of looking at skills. There's other ways of looking at assessment. There are other ways of looking about how kids are performing or being successful in today's world. And so if we just pay attention to NAEP, we are selling short the wonderful work that Gladys does with her leaders in the schools on a regular basis. It's a snapshot with a blurred lens. So I read those articles, and I get uncomfortable because ASA, Gladys, others have said for a very long time, stop. In fact, one of the very first lines that you and I wrote together in Learning 2025 is that you can't measure students through the lens of just one test or one piece of information. And so that's the first answer, Leila. Let us figure out clearly what we're saying here and go back to what I think Gladys really articulated beautifully, which is, what do we want the skills to be today? How do we want to make sure they're set for tomorrow? So if we keep on using that Marshall McLuhan looking through the rearview mirror and seeing a Conestoga wagon, we're going to not see anything but dust. Let us look through the front windshield. Let us look through the front windshield and see the aerospace programs and look at other ways of teaching and learning. I don't think testing and reporting out have caught up with what you just said, Leila, with what's going on in the schools. I just don't. Our schools are magnificent places. Not everybody is learning to read. Not everybody is learning to do math, and we know how to move ahead with that. We just need to pay attention. So it goes to, let me take your question and turn it to Gladys in a little bit different way. Again, because I know her and admire her so much. It's about leadership, Leila. It's about leadership. And by that, I mean, when you look at those numbers, do you become an Eeyore and say, golly gee, woe is us, the world is terrible, the sky is falling? Gladys doesn't do that. Or do you say, Gladys, is part of your responsibility, let us help our superintendents and principals in those 22 districts figure out how to understand the data, how to be good leaders, and how to think differently in this world.
totally agree. So, a couple of things. So we are super proud of the results of the students that go through our CTE programs. Their graduation rate is in the high 90s. They have they take a technical endorsement assessment, and we have one of the highest technical endorsement rates in the state of New York. Also super proud to say that I was part of the Blue Ribbon Commission. I don't know if you've heard about the Blue Ribbon Commission in New York State. Yes. So the Blue Ribbon Commission came out with some recommendations. Um, and they have developed a portrait of a graduate that is, I think it's pretty cool because the skills are a creative innovator, critical thinker, effective communicator, global citizen. Um, Students will be academically prepared, those kinds of skills. And this is all happening within a framework of culturally responsive education. New York State is super diverse. So the fact that at the heart of our portrait is culturally responsive and sustaining education is super important because every child needs a path. And with the graduation measures, the goal is to, so New York State. They forever have had the New York State Regents exams. And they're moving away from that to where students can show what they know and are able to do via other ways. So it could be a portfolio, it could be an alternative assessment, it could be a hands-on performance assessment. So down the road, there are students in New York State will have different ways of being able to show what they know and are able to do. Not everybody's a great test taker. And that one test one day is not the best indicator of what our students know and are able to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of wonderful sound bites that we're going to get out of what you just said, Gladys. This idea that the test, again, does not reflect necessarily what leading panels such as the Blue Ribbon panel is saying about kids and what the portrait of a student should be, or the portrait of a leader. What we know is needed in today's world. And we're still reporting out with that Conestoga wagon mentality. And thank you for raising the portrait, because when I was a principal and a superintendent in New York, and I used to go to every PTA and ask, I think, Leila, you've heard me tell this story before. I said to every PTA, to every faculty, give me a list of 5 or 6 words that you would use to measure success for your kids after 13 years, K through 12 in the district. Not one parent ever in my 25 years of being a superintendent said, I want my kid to be a great test taker, or I want my kid to get straight A's. They never said that. They said everything you just said about, I want them to be critical thinkers, problem solvers. I want them to be able to look at the world and be positive and be responsible and respectful. I mean, all of that. And how many times does Ed Week report out, Leila, those indicators? No, wait,
I
I want to
know.
make one
And
point. No, I want to make one point, Leila, because you're so on target in the question. The problem is for leaders in the seat, such as Gladys, how do you take where we are to where we would love to be in this world? That's when you were talking before about the future is now. How do you bridge those issues? Because they're real. That's what the public sees. That's what the teachers know. And yet we're trying to ask them to be a little bit different. That's hard. I think your question's on target.
But I think it extends beyond leadership. I mean, I think what I'm thinking about as I'm listening to the two of you is where does fidelity to high quality instructional materials fit into this conversation? Because I see a lot of this across the country in my work of, we bought this is supposed to teach them how to problem solve. And there's a rigidity to how we approach education. And I think what I'm wrestling with right now as I'm listening to this is, where do we become flexible? Because the leadership group, we all sit in rooms and talk about the future. We talk about how we need to be nimble. During COVID, we said we'll never go back. We've gone back. We are dealing with funding challenges, declining enrollment, which is related to funding, but also separate, right? We have a labor market that we're trying to prepare students for that is shifting today, and we cannot predict what it looks like in 5 years. My husband works in tech, and we were just talking this morning that folks are walking back from AI is going to change everything in the next 2 years, right? Now that's, well, wait a second. That was too ambitious, too bullish. What's the actual reality of what this technological advancement is going to do for us? So I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here. I really am wrestling with, and I want to hear from the two of you. Gladys, what's standing in our way? Because we've all been in this for a while, and we sit here and we have conversations about how we have to flex, and that we know the tests don't work, and we know, it has to be a portrait of a graduate. We've said that for a long time. What's standing in the way of full implementation of that from your view?
Structures, systems that have been in place for so many years. So I often talk about the Committee of 10, right? And you probably know that work. They came together many years ago to talk about what that high school curricula should be. That's what it is still today, over 100 years later. Is that really where we should be? Obviously, it's not. But that's what continues to be in the structures. Systems like schools are hard to change, right? And they were developed with a purpose. So, and Mort has heard me talk about this. Why does every child have to go through pre-K for 10 months, kindergarten 10 months, and go on all the way through? We all know that kids learn differently at different speeds. We all know this, but the systems are there. There's seat time that's required. There's the Carnegie unit that's been in the way. There's so many structures that have that are hard to get away from. And we have a lot of schools. Public schools are doing some amazing things. We have a lot of early college high schools across our nation that are graduating kids with their high school diploma and their college degree, 2-year degree. This is happening in 4 years, sometimes in 3 years at the high school level. So I find that structures get in the way. This is our system is an assessment-driven system, and it's going to take some time to get away from that. So I think everything needs to be overhauled, and at the center. And we talked about this when we did Learning 2025. The student needs to be at the center. And what does that student need to explore their passions and to go down the route that they will be successful in? What are those things, those abilities that we need to help
I
develop?
want to apologize that my video and my audio have been not at the greatest today. So it's fun when we talk about different ways of learning and we talk about technology. And and, I get a note from our local provider and says, "Hey, it might not work today." Thank you. So Gladys, this question of structures and systems, And Committee of 10, 1898, 127 years ago. And so, I think there's another piece. I don't know that we ever came to terms as a country about the purpose and the intent, and so the Committee of 10 had its ideas, and then, during World War One, and, we can go through the whole history of our country, and Diane Ravitch wrote this brilliant book called Troubled Crusade, and at its heart, it's like saying, well, we never came to full terms to what you described, the Blue Ribbon Panel or Learning 2025 from ASA or the other initiatives. It never became part of the culture. Yeah, yeah. And I think until we understand, are we preparing stuff like when I was in high school, there was a commercial track and a college prep track and an industrial track. And so it was always about purpose in a timely way. Um, and I think it's still a cultural question that still goes in the way of those systems and structures.
And I have to say, I've always said, and I know, Mort, you will agree with this because I've heard you say too, part of our education system has to be about ensuring that our democracy continues, right? And creating those citizens that are engaged in the political process. So that is a huge part of our education purpose, and ensuring that our as part of that our children, will be prepared to be productive citizens that are part of the economy, right? And continue our middle class, and because we've learned to live with certain benefits, and unless we continue to protect that, it's not going to happen. And I think that we feel, I feel like, um you know that democratic principle needs to be at the forefront of education.
I'm going to say something and I want to lead with it may sound radical at first, but just ride with me for a second. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about how we have to put students at the center. And I wrote that and I circled it. What does it look like? But I'm listening and I'm thinking about public ed is under attack. It is. There's a lot of skepticism about whether or not public education is serving communities. And I'm thinking about the Ed Week headline and what you two are saying. We have a messaging problem in public education right now, right? Part of this, you
Yes.
talk about leadership more. We are not controlling the narrative and the message. And here's the radical thing I'm about to throw out there. I don't know. This is just Leila kind of thinking as I'm listening to the two of you. Have we hurt ourselves in positioning so much of our work? And I do this too. It's all about the student, the individual student. How do I meet the individual need? And so we have outsiders saying we're over indexing on the individual and can they really serve the community? And do we need to shift the way we talk about what we're doing as in service of the community, the local economy, and the impact that we're driving? I'm not sure we do that well because we love our students and we care so much about them and we talk about them at that individual level. But I think those outside of the system and our critics only hear that and are skeptical about what we're actually trying to do. And so my wondering is, do we actually need to stop talking about how it's the student at the center and we're going to accommodate and build everything around the individual, and instead our messaging really needs to show this is the impact that we're driving in the community and it's insert and back into our students? I don't know. That's just something that I wrote down and I'm circling around now as I'm listening to the two of you, because I think we talk a lot about starting with the individual student. And I wonder if we're hurting ourselves in that messaging.
That's a great, I'll be thinking a lot about that, because, um, uh, I think that because everyone is so different, um, I think that we are forced to talk about individuals and the collective of how we prepare individuals to support the economy and the labor market. Um, you know, you're bringing the individuals to a, let's say, a CTE program, and they learn all the skills, but they may learn it at different rates, different ways. The end goal is the same, that they have the skills to be successful in the workforce, um, and support themselves and support the economy. So that's a good pondering that I'll think a lot about, because I think we do have a narrative problem. And I think ASA has been working a lot to try to figure that out, because the stories of our school systems are not told enough. The successes of our students are not, I don't think, are celebrated enough. So I totally agree with you. But I think that we need to figure
So
that one out.
I feel like this is a good place more for you to do our now what, so what.
Exactly what I was going to say. So, this question that Leila just posed, Gladys, I think is really core to what you and I were talking about 5 minutes ago, which is what's the purpose, and have we clearly stated that. And I think that's what you just asked in a very sophisticated and articulate way, Leila. So, thank you for that. I think the goal still is about sustaining our democracy and how we get there, and what set of priorities in order to get there needs a robust conversation. And the way we're going as a country seems more divisive than robust and collegial and collaborative. And I think that's also an issue for us. So, Gladys, the now what, so what, as we wrap up today's wonderful conversation, that is like, what do you see? Or, Leila and I are going to certainly jump in, as you could see we already do with each other. But what do you see as the next steps, as the next places to go, as the next things to pay attention to? And when I say that, I'm really mindful again of Leila's question to me a while ago, which is, isn't that today's question about today's kids and today's schooling? So what do you see as the now what, so what for us to think about?
So I guess I guess that in my world here, it's about continuing to build the capacity of our staff, make sure that we have a pipeline of future educators, of future leaders, continuing to innovate programs that prepare the students for those jobs that have yet to be created with the necessary skills, such as problem solving, creative thinking, critical thinking. Um, I think that we need to explore AI and make sure that we stay, at the leading edge of the technologies, because they're they are they have always, new technologies have always shaken the systems a bit. And that's a topic for another conversation. So I think those are some of the things, we need to continue to we do need to tell the great stories, right? That are happening in our schools, and we need to continue to do all those things to ensure that what we're doing is to prepare our students for our world. a global
And
world.
Leila, as I hand it back to you, I just want to pick up on one thread that I've heard today. It's that there is an uncertainty about the work we're doing. There is a certainty about the fact and the deep belief that public education is the vehicle for sustaining our democracy, and you could tug and pull at it, but if you pull too hard as the threads of that fabric, we will lose our democracy. And so I think as three strong public school believers and advocates, you know what the know what sound what is to me? This podcast, thousands of other podcasts, conversations which give agency and voice to those who are doing the work and raising their stories. And you and I and others could be supportive. But it's in great appreciation for Gladys and her colleagues across the country who are doing their work, rolling up the sleeves and asking the right question.
So I thank you both so much. I think I cannot put what you both just said in better words, so I'm not going to try. And what I want to say is, Gladys, thank you for everything that you're doing, not just in the state of New York, but nationally in service of our leaders and our students. You have two admirers here on the show, and I think we have to have you back so we can dig into the AI portion of your work, since we only got to the workforce development. We should have known. But truly, what you're doing in service of children and is nothing short of something you should feel incredibly proud of. I cannot wait to hear in a year from now how many more students are going through this apprenticeship program, and really elevating it as an exemplar as we work toward the purpose of public education, which is our democracy and preparing the next generation workforce, right? So to our audience, thank you for listening in. Make sure you go to the K-12 Change Equation website, submit questions, comments. Mort and I look at that to inform upcoming episodes. This is the first in a series of episodes on the show where we're going to be digging in to how regional education agencies are in service of both state and local education agencies. So wishing everyone a great week ahead, and we'll see you back on the next episode.
Thank you, Gladys.
Thank you so much.